Hello, this is an 1893 Fauber patent crankset, and it is mangled, but it needs not to be. So let's get to the shop and fix that and learn a little more about it.
She's from heaven, heart size of the Amazon, hand steady, hand long, holding fire in her hands. She starts to...
And just like that, the crank is off the bike and it's in the vise, where we can see that it's not doing too good. It's bent 6 ways to Sunday. Really just so much to do. We're going to be fixing that with a process called cold setting, where we're going to be bending the metal back into shape without heating it, because by heating it, you're really messing with a lot of metallurgy in a way that's going to soften the steel. All the work hardening from the forging that gave it a lot of strength. You're really going to be messing with that, and I prefer to cold set it, which runs the risk of strain hardening it too much and breaking it. You know, the paperclip problem where you bend it back and forth a bunch of times and just snaps. But I prefer to do it this way because it's way simpler. You don't need a torch. But I think in the end, it'll make it less flexible and less likely to bend again if only more brittle. So, you know, it's give and take. But it worked really well in my case. But this crank we're working with is an 1893 patent Fauber crank. And that was a really huge company around the turn of the last century. They were a titan of American cycling industry. They made hundreds of thousands of cranks before they imploded and pretty much left the scene entirely about 1904. So this company was founded by William Fauber. He patents this crank in 1893. Makes more and more and more every year before a massive fire at his factory forces him to close, whereby he takes a ginormous insurance payout and decides not to restart the company, but to move to France and basically invent the hydroplane as we know it today. So he's really famous for that. He's really well known for this crank design because he was so innovative at the time, and a lot of later cranks owe a lot to it. This one-piece forging with a metal adjuster on it. It's very similar to what cruiser bikes and BMX bikes used for decades and decades and decades, well into the 1900s. So it has a huge legacy, but it's very unknown to most people today because, again, this was made 120 years ago, so that's understandable. But this one, being a steel crank and being so old, steel is very strong, but it can also be very easy to bend if it's not hardened super high or if it's not super thick. And it's not uncommon for these to be bent or even broken at the pedal bosses because they're so thin. In this case, mine are just bent. So we're going to be carefully, one little bit at a time, bending it. And one of the cool features about this crank is that it's called a spear point design. So that basically means the crank arm is like diamond shaped in profile, like a parallelogram, which was an aesthetic feature, but it also allows us to grab it with a wrench, like as if they were wrench flats. So we don't even need to mark up or damage the crank arm at all by straightening it, which is a really nice feature to kind of be taking advantage of, even if it wasn't intended that way. So Fauber, right? He starts this company. It's incredibly successful. He's supplying a huge part of the cycling industry in this country at the time when there's about 3,000 manufacturers, a lot of them based in Illinois, where his company was in the Chicago area. And we can look at these old company records, or not these company records, but employment records. And you can see that he had a couple hundred employees, not all of whom were adults. This being the Victorian age, had a handful of child laborers, which, not great, but, that's a Victorian Industrial Revolution kind of bingo card for you. Bad working conditions and child labor, that's, for the almighty dollar. So in the end, of course, the place burns down and he takes his insurance payout. And he goes to France, basically living that playboy lifestyle with his massive insurance check hanging out with rich guys and building hydroplanes and just generally having a great time before he eventually returns to the United States to build more hydroplanes for some clients. Presumably, I think he returned because he ran out of money. But he was also a huge car guy. A lot of these early industrialists, even if they weren't in the industrial or in the automotive space, it was such a huge growing sector that everybody was interested in. So when he had the Fauber crank factory making these cranks and the bottom brackets that went with them, he also did contract work for the famous luxury car brand Peerless, which is a long dead, but at the time exceedingly prestigious brand, up there with Packard and Pierce Arrow. So he did a lot of contract work. He claims to have made a lot of parts for them, about 100 cars, which I saw in this old kind of court deposition for something unrelated. Which this unrelated thing is him being mad at the government for not paying him for patents related to the hydroplane during World War I. The U.S. government basically appropriated a bunch of patents so they could build war material warplanes effectively. And he was cool with that. He just wanted to get paid because other people did, and he felt like he wasn't. So this is a pretty interesting little insight into, he kind of gives a little rundown on his sort of perspective on his history of things. But going on with the car thing, he also invented a car with two wheels. And you might think, wow, a car can't have two wheels. Otherwise, that's a motorcycle. But no, he called it the bicar. And not only did he call it the bicar, he put his name in front of it. That's how proud of it he was. It's the Fauber bicar. And you're thinking, gosh, how does a car with two wheels stay upright? And the answer is that it sort of doesn't. So you need training wheels, and it's in the drawings here. And in fact, not even training wheels, because training wheels, they're kind of fragile. The wheels can break or whatever, is what he says. So it has skids, basically, little bent pieces of metal that drag on the ground when it's not going quick enough to stabilize itself. So not only does it have training wheels, he disses training wheels because they're too complicated and goes, no, it's just skids. So, not every idea was a winner with these early industrialists. Some of them, they get a really profitable, huge idea, and then they do it again, and they think every idea they have is great, and they kind of start drinking their own Kool-Aid, and you end up with objectively stupid ideas like this, where it's every problem of a motorcycle with none of its benefits. It's just a bad idea. But at the time, anything seemed possible, and if it made money, then great, and clearly that one didn't. But yeah, the guy was, doing any which thing. It's just kind of a Victorian era industrial revolution thing of like anything was possible, even if it wasn't. And really his greatest hit was this crank design. That's what he's most known for today. If they bear his name, and the legacy still lives on today, which, I'm sure the guy wasn't awesome going off of the records about unions at the time. He was very much on their boycott list because he fired all sorts of people for trying to get better conditions. So I think he was probably not a great dude, but I think his invention certainly was. And I'm glad we were able to save this one and get it back into service so more people can see it in action and appreciate this formative era of cycling history. We'll see you in the next one to do with this 1890s track racer. I hope you'll join me. Thank you very much.
The ice at the door when tie-dye. Wonder where this fairy came from. She's from hell.